Y'all ready to talk about how meaningless life is? It's not all that. It's not all that. All right, so tonight we are starting the study of Ecclesiastes. Most of y'all know we kind of favor doing Old Testament Wednesday night, New Testament Sunday. That's not set in stone. We'll preach the Old Testament on Sunday too. It's just kind of how we've landed. And a lot of times when we start a new book, and granted it's not that often, we will, I like to show those Bible Project videos, that kind of sum up the book in 6 or 7 minutes to show us where we're going. The videos are pretty good. They give us kind of a bird's eye view of the different book we're studying, whatever. But I don't know if I say this every time we watch one, but you take it for what it's worth. I don't always agree with every little detail that they say, and we'll talk about some things, but let's begin by just listening to the introduction, and it's going to kind of give us a roadmap of Ecclesiastes and kind of show us where we're going. Okay? Wait a minute, I need sound. We got sound? No. We don't have sound. Got sound now? Sorry, I should have told y'all that beforehand. I didn't mention it. Still don't have sound.
It's part of the Bible's wisdom literature, and it opens with this.
Okay, now I'm starting it over again.
The book of Ecclesiastes. It's part of the Bible's wisdom literature, and it opens with this line. The words of Kohelet, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Now, in Hebrew, the word Kohelet means someone who has gathered people together. And in this case, it's to learn, so it's often translated in English as teacher. And the teacher is said to be a son or a descendant of King David. And so there are different views about who this figure might have been. Many think that it refers to King Solomon, others to maybe one of the later kings of David's line, and still others think that it's actually a later Israelite teacher who has adopted a Solomon-like persona as a teaching aid. Whichever of these views is correct, the key thing is to recognize that the teacher is a character in the book and is different than the author of the book, who remains anonymous. So we do hear the teacher's voice for most of the book, but it's actually a different voice, the author, who introduces us to the teacher in the first sentence, and then at the end concludes the book by summarizing and evaluating everything the teacher just said. So the author is someone who wants us to hear all that the teacher has to say and then help us process it and form our own conclusion. So what does the teacher have to say? Well, the author summarizes the teacher's basic message at the beginning and right at the end. And it's Hevel. Hevel. Everything is utterly Hevel. Now, most English Bibles translate this word Hevel as meaningless, but that doesn't quite capture the heart of the idea. In Hebrew, Hevel literally means vapor or smoke. And the teacher uses this word 38 times in the book as a metaphor to describe how life is, first of all, temporary or fleeting, like a wisp of smoke. But secondly, also how life is an enigma or a paradox. Like smoke, it appears solid, but when you try and grab onto it, there's nothing there. So there's so much beauty or goodness in the world, but just when you're enjoying it, tragedy strikes and it all seems to blow away. Or we all have a strong sense of justice, but all of the time bad things happen to good people. So life is constantly, it's unpredictable, it's unstable, or in the teacher's words, like chasing after the wind. Hevel. Now that's kind of a downer. So why is he saying all of this? The author's basic goal is to target all of the ways that we try to build meaning and purpose in our lives apart from God. And he lets the teacher deconstruct these. So the author thinks we spend most of our time investing energy and emotion in things that ultimately have no lasting meaning or significance. And he lets the teacher give us a hard lesson in reality. You can see this most clearly in the opening and closing poems, which focus first of all on time and then on death. So the teacher says, you can spend your whole life working and achieving because you think that makes your life meaningful. You should really stop and consider the march of time. For all of the human effort that takes place in the world, nothing really ever changes. So sure, we develop technology and we build nations that rise and fall, but go climb a mountain and see if it cares. It was there long before any of us, and it will be here long after. I mean, no one's even going to remember you or anything you did 100 years from now, but that mountain, it'll still be there. And the ocean will still be breaking on the beach, and the sun will still rise and set. And so time will eventually erase you and me and everything that we care about. And if that's not disheartening enough, the teacher also can't stop talking about death all the way through the book, but especially in this poem near the end. He says, death is the great equalizer, and it renders meaningless most of our daily activities. It devours the wise and the fool, the rich and the poor. No matter who you are, what you've done, good or bad, we're all going to die, and it's inescapable. So with these two ideas in hand, the teacher goes on to consider all the activities and false hopes that we invest our lives in to find meaning and significance, like wealth or career or social status or pleasure. So you think working hard is going to make life worth it? Think about the stress and the toll that takes on you, all the anxiety and the sleepless nights. And by the time you actually earn some wealth, you're going to be too old to enjoy it anyway. And then by the time that you have to pass it on to someone, they may not even be someone who cares about anything that you did. Or maybe you think pleasure is going to make life worth it for you. Go for it. Live for your vacations, live for the weekend party. Monday always comes. Everything is utterly hevel. So what does the teacher advocate then? That we become pure hedonists or relativists? Well, no, that would be hevel too. The teacher acknowledges the ideas from Proverbs that living by wisdom and the fear of the Lord, that these have real advantages. On the whole, life will probably go better for you. See, but the problem is that even living by wisdom and the fear of the Lord, they're hevel too, because they don't guarantee a good life. Good people die tragically, and horrible people live long and prosper. There's just too many exceptions. And so even wisdom is hevel. Again, not meaningless, but an enigma. Wisdom doesn't work the way you think it should all of the time. So what's the way forward in the midst of all this hevel? And here, paradoxically, the teacher discovers the key to the true enjoyment of life under the sun. It's accepting hevel. It's acknowledging that everything in your life is totally out of your control. About 6 different times at some of the bleakest moments in his monologue, the teacher talks about the gift of God, which is the enjoyment of simple, good things in life, like friendship or family, a good meal or a sunny day. You can't control these things. You're certainly not guaranteed them, but that's their beauty. When I come to adopt a posture of total trust in God, it frees me to simply enjoy my life as I actually experience it, not as I think it ought to be. Because even my expectations about what life ought to be are ultimately hevel. Hevel. Everything under the sun is utterly hevel. And so the teacher's words come to a close. Right here at the end, the author speaks up again, and he brings it all to a conclusion. He says, the teacher's words are very important for us to hear. He likens them to a shepherd's staff with a goad, a pointy end, which might hurt when it pokes you, but he says the teacher is trying to poke you to get you to move in the right direction, towards greater wisdom. The author then warns us that you can actually take the teacher's words too far, and you could spend your whole life buried in books trying to answer life's existential puzzles. Don't try, he says. You'll never get there. And so instead, the author offers his own conclusion, and it's this: fear God and keep his commandments. This is the whole duty of humans, for God will bring every deed into judgment, every hidden thing, whether good or evil. And so the author thinks it's good to let the teacher challenge your false hopes and remind you that time and death make most of life completely out of your control. But what gives life true meaning is the hope of God's judgment. The hope that one day God will clear away all of the hevel and bring true justice to our world. And it's that hope that should fuel a life of honesty and integrity before God, despite the fact that I remain puzzled by most of life's mysteries. And that's the wisdom of the book of Ecclesiastes.
Now, y'all see why I didn't want to do that. I don't want to say too old to enjoy your money. What's wrong? Crazy. All right. So I thought it'd be good for you to watch that. It kind of gives us an overview like it normally does. There are a couple things in there that I don't know that I would phrase that way, and we'll talk about those as we get there. What we're going to do is we're going to study this book like we study every other book, verse by verse, section by section. But Ecclesiastes is different than most other books of the Bible. It's kind of like Job. You can't just build your whole theology on an individual verse here or an individual verse there and not pay attention to the point of the book. As we dig into the details of Ecclesiastes, what we're doing is we're examining an argument that is moving toward a conclusion. And so we have to continually remind ourselves every week of that conclusion, or we're going to misinterpret the things that you find in this book. So there's places where it says all the work that you do in this life is meaningless, or it's vain, or it's no purpose in it, or whatever. And if you just take that and say, okay, well, nothing matters, then you're missing the point of Ecclesiastes. That's not the conclusion the author draws. Ecclesiastes is bleak and it is depressing, and it's a depressing look at life and reality. But what it's doing is systematically taking every facet of life apart and pretty much shows us how it is vanity. He's going to walk through and show the futility of pretty much everything, but the book doesn't leave us in despair thinking that everything is meaningless. It's only meaningless and futile without God, without that worldview. So I didn't realize he was going to read this in the video, so I might be covering some things you already saw. But the end of the book, this is the end of the matter, all's been heard. After the argument is completed with all of this vanity, 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 the conclusion is fear God and keep His commandments, and that's the whole duty of man. That's the place meaning is found. The book is going to strip away everything that we try to find meaning and purpose in, so that we're prepared to hear this truth. God alone provides the meaning and the soul satisfaction that human beings search for in all of the things of the world and things of this life. So the author goes into depth showing us that all the things in this world in and of themselves are vanity. But that's not the whole story. Y'all with me? That making sense? Okay. The message of Ecclesiastes is that when we find our purpose and our meaning and our reality in God, then we are free to enjoy all of these things that He's been calling vanity this whole time. As long as we're not trying to find our meaning, our satisfaction in them. All the gifts of God, creation and enjoyment and work and finances and family and all those things that are said to be vanity in various places in Ecclesiastes, God gives them meaning. They are gifts to be enjoyed. Like he said, not guaranteed them, but we're to enjoy them. So it's not as if it's just all bleak and we should never find enjoyment in work or find enjoyment in entertainment or find enjoyment in creation as we go to the Grand Canyon or whatever. That's not the point of the book. It's if you try to find your meaning in these things, they're vanity. The author spends the majority of the book showing nothing matters. So we will find our meaning in God, and when we do, then we find that everything matters. Okay? Y'all with me? All right, so we're going to read 1 through 11, and like I said, I'll probably say some things the video said, but we're just going to do it. It says, "The words of the preacher, the son of David, king of Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher." He called him the teacher, but preacher just as good. "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Everything is vanity. "What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which is said, see, this is new? It has already been in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. Very, very bleak. So let's start with the beginning. And verse 1 is basically kind of a superscription of the author. He says, the words of the preacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Now, the video seemed pretty certain that it wasn't Solomon who wrote Ecclesiastes, and that the author and the one he calls the preacher are not the same person. Traditionally, throughout history, Solomon is credited as the author and the preacher. But more modern scholarship, even among conservative scholars, is that that the author isn't Solomon, but a guy who presents himself in a Solomon-like way to make the points. Okay, whatever you want to say, but I must be an old dinosaur. I think it was Solomon, and I think Solomon is the preacher and the author. I think they're one and the same. Many of the things that are said about him sound exactly like Solomon. He had wisdom surpassing all who were before him in Jerusalem. He had wealth, untold wealth, and works that no one could possibly achieve. In chapter 12, it says the preacher weighed and studied and arranged many proverbs with care. That's what Solomon did. And he's right, most of Ecclesiastes is written in the first person, as if the preacher's speaking. This is what I saw. This is what I said in my heart. And there are some places at the end where the text is written in the third person, like chapter 12, verse 9 says, besides being wise, the preacher also taught the people knowledge. So it kind of goes back and forth in the perspective, first person, third person, but I don't think that changes the fact that Solomon wrote it. I believe Solomon is talking about himself as the dispenser of wisdom. So I'm not going to fight about that, but that's just fair game, just full disclosure. I think I'm right and the video's wrong. Now, the word translated preacher here, as they said, koheleth, it's difficult. It's a difficult word in Hebrew. You saw in the video, it literally means one who gathers or assembles. And that's why it's translated preacher, because it's talking about someone who is gathering a people and dispensing wisdom to them. In fact, the word Ecclesiastes is the Greek translation of koheleth. It means of the assembly. That's why, like, ecclesia is the church in the New Testament. It's a Greek word, means assemble, of the assembly. So after he gives the introduction, okay, the preacher, this is who's talking, and he tells us he's son of David, king in Jerusalem. Our minds immediately go to Solomon. Could be a descendant of David, but I don't think so. He gives us then the thematic statement that is going to characterize the whole book. And in verse 2, it is vanity of vanities. Says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. So right off the bat, he just says everything. The whole total of human existence is vanity. And he's going to spend the next 12 chapters really proving this point in detail. But if you read this statement and take the reality of it to heart, and build your life and your theology and your philosophy of living from this statement without the conclusion that the author comes to in the book, you end up misinterpreting not only your life and life in general, but the book itself. All that we are and all that we do is vanity, unless you see it in the perspective of God and His eternal glory. So let's talk about vanity. They must be using NIV, because NIV translates the word as meaningless. Anybody, is that what it says in your NIV? Am I right about that? Okay. I don't like that. Solomon didn't ask my opinion. I don't like that translation, because I understand it, and it's not wrong. It's not a wrong translation. I understand it, because if you live for fill in the blank without God, it's all going to pass away and it's all going to prove to be meaningless. So I do understand that. But calling it meaningless gives the impression that there's no purpose in anything. I don't think that's the best way to understand what the author's saying. The word hevel, it technically means, just like he said, puff of wind, breath, vapor of smoke, and it's translated vanity because just like the wind, there's nothing you can grab onto. It's fleeting and solid. It's not solid. It's fleeting and it's temporary. And so in that sense, if all you build your life on is fleeting and temporary, then yeah, it is meaningless. So I get it. I'm not saying it's a wrong translation. I just don't want us to think that what he's saying is that God has no purpose in work, in family, in enjoyment, because he does. And he's going to make that clear later in the book. But vanity is a good translation, I think, because it captures the idea of something that looks solid but is not. That same word, hevel, is used in Psalm 39:5, where it says, "Behold, you have made my days a few handbreadths, and my lifetime is nothing before you. Surely all mankind stands as a mere hevel," breath. And Psalm 144:4, "Man is like a breath." There's the word again, hevel. "His days are like passing shadow." So every time it's used in the Psalm, he's talking about fleeting, temporary, not lasting. And then, you ladies, your favorite chapter, Proverbs 31, "Charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised." Vain is how it's translated. So, and we think, in that sense, you could interpret that as beauty is prideful or whatever, but I think beauty is fleeting. Beauty is not going to last. It's a woman who fears the Lord that's to be praised. So you can see in all these other passages, the word is conveying, in these passages at least, the idea that something is fleeting. It doesn't last. You can't grab hold. You can't build your life on it. You can't find meaning in those things. So, make sure you hear me now. So on one level, meaningless does fit, because fleeting things cannot be where your meaning is found. If all you build your life on is fleeting stuff, it is meaningless. But throughout the book, the preacher is going to show us that he doesn't believe that everything is meaningless in the sense that we think. He doesn't believe that there is nothing of value. There is nothing that there's nothing that is purposelessness. Whatever. So, just for example, in chapter 2, we're going to see he's going to commend wisdom over foolishness. He's going to tell us wisdom is better than foolishness. So wisdom is not purposeless in that sense. It's better. He's going to tell us in chapter 9 to enjoy marriage and to enjoy food and to revel in these things in this life. And so there is purpose in things. But the things of this life, although they do have purpose and they are gifts to be enjoyed, the point is that everything that we are, everything that we do, has no meaning if we put our hope in those things and build our lives on it, because it's all going to pass away. Y'all with me? Yes. Questions, comments, cries of outrage? Okay. But to say everything is vanity, fleeting, it's very provocative. It's good clickbait to start a book. And he didn't use social media, but that's a good headline to get you to read the article. It's provocative. He wants us to be shocked and say, "Well, what do you mean? There's nothing that's substantial, nothing at all in this life, nothing that's significant." And then he follows this statement with the question that he will wrestle with through the rest of the book, and it's the question that all of humanity in every age eventually wrestles with. It says, "What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun?" Now, before you ask any questions, notice the phrase "under the sun." You're going to see it almost 30 times in this book. So as he describes the absurdity and the futility of everything, work, pleasure, wisdom, everything, he's going to repeatedly use this phrase, "under the sun." And this is my opinion. There are people that disagree with me, theologians and things. But using this phrase, I think he's talking about what man is able to see from his human perspective in the visible world. So by repeating the phrase "under the sun," it's kind of giving us a clue of the conclusion that he's going to draw, that things do have meaning as long as we find our meaning in God. So all the things we try to find meaning and live for are meaningless unless we see them for what they are, as the plan of God, the gift of God, and our meaning and purpose is found in God. So everything in creation, by definition, everything under the sun, everything that the sun shines down on is in and of itself. If that's all we see, is vanity. And if all we focus our lives upon is what's found in this world, this creation, then we will be left with meaninglessness. We will be left with vanity. The author is meeting mankind on common ground using the fallen logic of the human heart in order to show the utter meaninglessness of any worldview without God. Still with me? I can't help it. Ecclesiastes is, by its nature, a little philosophical, so we're going to get into some of this stuff. It's only, in my opinion, it's only when we lift our gaze above the sun, above the creation, to see the beauty and glory of God in all of these things under the sun, that we discover why everything, including the things in creation, really do matter. You with me? Okay. The author begins with this question: what gain is there? What profit is there? What goal is there to be reached by all the things that we do in this life? All that we work for, all that we strive for, all that we find important. It's a question, really. I mean, have you ever asked that question? Like, what's the meaning of my life? What does my life count for? Nobody's ever asked, just me? Yeah. Huh? Yeah. I don't want to know what you think my life counts for. Yeah, it's a question that as people who, unless Jesus returns, we all know we're all going to die, and our life is going to come to an end, and setting aside eternal life and focusing on God as a human being, a fallen human being, that's just a natural, eventual question that you're going to ask, and you're going to wrestle with. What's the point? What's the point of it all? What am I going to have to show for all of my toil in this life, all my investment, all my discipline, all my devotion to this thing or to that thing? What am I actually accomplishing in all my work, in all my striving, in what I'm building, in everything? I remember having this kind of, crisis, I guess. I remember having it as a student in college. I remember exactly where I was sitting. I was sitting at a desk in my house, and I was studying for a microbiology exam. And I kind of liked microbiology. But all my friends were out doing their thing, and here I was studying. I wasn't, that's another story. And I remember the thought entering my mind: why are you just hitting it so hard? Why are you studying so hard? And it wasn't just about this one night. It was just in general with school and everything. And I remember the thought entering my head, you got an exam tomorrow. You got to pass this exam. And then the question was like, well, why are you trying so hard? Like, what's the goal? Is the goal to pass the exam? Well, no, the goal is to get a good grade in this class. I need to pass this class. And then just like a kid going, why? I was like, well, is that the goal? Is that your goal in life, is to pass this class? Well, of course not. That's not my goal. I want to graduate, with a degree, so that's your goal. That's the end goal for all this, is to get a degree. Well, no, I want a good job, that makes money. And then it was that, you're going to finally reach the goal of your life when you have a good job and you make money? Well, no, the goal is to have enough money to enjoy life and to retire and to spend my days just enjoying everything and being comfortable. And then it was like, I wasn't hearing voices or nothing. This is just me thinking through things. It was like, well, then what happens after that? Well, then I die. And then I had this epiphany. No matter how hard I work, no matter what I achieve, no matter how much enjoyment I experience or how successful I am, it's all going to end in death. And being the idiot that I was, the conclusion I drew was, well, then I'm not going to work at all. I'm just going to go enjoy life now. And I quit college, and I could play the guitar, and all of that that happened. And after several years of that, I was not a Christian at this time, by the way. After several years of that, I came to realize that just enjoyment itself is fleeting, and you can't keep hold of it. And no matter how much you get, you're always going to want more, and it's never going to be enough. And you know what? You're still going to die. So this question the author raises in verse 3, it's really, for me anyway, it's really packed full of meaning. Because I actually, that's not just a preacher story. That actually happened. I came to this crisis. Dana remembers in college them days. And I came to this philosophical crisis and this existential thing where, like, you know, if life don't have no meaning, I'm just going to eat, drink, and be merry. But here, the author of Ecclesiastes doesn't answer the question for us. He doesn't give us any hope at all. Instead, he draws us in by showing a series of things that he says are vanity. Things that are just spinning their wheels and never going anywhere, never achieving anything, never moving toward any kind of goal. And he's going to give us examples from creation in verses 4 through 7, and he's going to give us examples from human experience in 8 through 11. I know I'm saying a lot, and I'm saying it fast. Is there any questions, any comments, any statements y'all want to make? Okay, then I'm moving on. I gave you 0.3 seconds, and that's enough. You should have said something. So, he says, a generation goes, a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. That we know there's going to be a new earth. All that's aside. This is, remember, human point of view under the sun. He says that people are born, people die all the time, and the earth just keeps on rocking on. You know, maybe you think meaning is found in making the world a better place or leaving something for those after you. But those who you strive to leave something for, they're going to die too. The younger generation is going to become the older generation. And there will be another generation after that one dies. The rise of a new generation gives the impression that, you know, something's new and something's happening, but nothing really is. One generation rises with exuberance and energy and idealism and just grand plans. They build cities, they write books, they fight wars, they raise families, they grow old and they die. And then another generation comes. Another generation takes their place, convinced that they're going to finally get it right. And they're going to finally find meaning and purpose and all these things, only to repeat the same cycle. And through this parade of human lives and generations, the earth just keeps on turning, indifferent to it all. The day after you die, the world will go right on turning just like the day before. Now, yeah, I know, I mean, remember, human point of view. You say, okay, all right, I hear what you're saying. If the earth remains, well, then maybe that is something that is not vanity, and it disproves your argument. It's not fleeting, as you said. The author's not going to let us draw that conclusion. In verses 5 through 7, we'll get done early, and then you can ask questions. It says the sun, 3 examples: the sun, the wind, the rivers. The sun rises and the sun goes down, hastens to the place where it rises. Let's stop there and check that. It says, now remember, it just seems really odd, and it seems really incorrect for those of us who know our Bibles. Because elsewhere in the Bible, we're told to find encouragement from nature and the glory of God in nature and creation. And we're told that the purpose of creation is to declare the glory of God. But when a person outside of God's grace sees the sun, all he can see is a repetition of a world going nowhere. Yes, to those who find their meaning and their purpose in God, every new morning as the sun rises bring with it the new mercies of God. His mercies are new every morning. But if we seek meaning in creation itself, it's striving for nothing. Verse 5, the author paints just the daily course of the sun, rising and setting, as pointless. Around and around it goes. Where it stops, nobody knows. It goes nowhere. It's getting nowhere. It's just going to rise again. It's just going around and around and around. It rises and sets, rises and sets. There's no progress toward anything. And then he says the same thing about the wind. Verse 6 says, the wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. The wind is mighty. I mean, Kansas people know that for sure. But for all its blowing, it never progresses toward anything. Not from a human point of view. It just blows around, 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 and around again. And in verse 7, it says the same about the rivers. All streams run into the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. He's not talking about what we know today as like the water cycle, like water evaporating and then raining back down, all that stuff. He's viewing from a human point of view, just with the naked eye, rivers continuously flowing into the sea, and it's never filling it up. You know, with just you can picture Solomon standing by the Jordan River. It just looks like it's just going, going, and going, and going. It's just never making a dent. It would be especially relevant if you were standing in Judea at the Jordan River. The Jordan flows into the Dead Sea day after day after day after day, and there's no river coming out of the Dead Sea. You know, but the sea's never filled up. It never overflows. Now, we know today evaporation takes up the water from the Dead Sea and the water cycle, all that stuff. But to the naked eye, it's just endless, monotonous effort, not accomplishing anything at all. The point is that if the sun and the wind and the mighty rivers have nothing to show for their constant daily grind of monotonous labor, what hope do we have of ever accomplishing anything? Unlike the earth, in Solomon's view, we don't remain. We die. And then a new generation takes our place. So in this short lifespan of those who don't remain, even the earth remains, and the earth is filled with monotony, not accomplishing anything. Now the preacher's not denying the beauty or the order of creation. He's saying that if you look at it only under the sun, without reference to the Creator that it testifies to, in our fallen nature, just the regularities of nature that should point us to God become evidence of just a wearying, monotonous, purposeless existence. Verse 8 says, all things are full of weariness, and man cannot utter it. How wearying all this is. Always toiling, always striving, and never reaching any kind of goal. That is maddening when it happens to you, like in your work or in your whatever. When you're just giving all you got and striving, and there's no point in it. There's no end. The futility is so much that man can't express it in words, Solomon says. Now, living from this kind of perspective, it's tiresome. And just the boredom and monotony of it all is just hopeless. And then he turns toward, those are creation. Then he turns toward mankind and personal experience, if you want to say it that way, to show how wearisome life is. Second part of verse 8, he says, the eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. It shows us that the satisfaction of our own senses is just like the river flowing into the sea and never filling it. There's no end. There's no goal. It's just a continual striving. Satisfaction in the senses is not attainable. Just like those rivers, we keep feeding it, feeding it, feeding it, feeding it, it never accomplishes anything. I mean, if we think we'll find meaning and purpose in satisfying our senses, whatever they may be, living for the enjoyment of it all, you will discover just how monotonous and vain it really is. There's no goal to reach there. No profit, as he said earlier. Because your eyes and your ears and your senses can never, ever, ever be satisfied. They always clamor for more and more and more. Every day there's an endless parade of visual images, television and YouTube and Netflix. And every day there's more content to listen to or to read or books to consume. And it's never enough Our eyes and ears are never satisfied. They always want more, and we're always back trying to fill up that well again. So we keep messaging, we keep listening, we keep being entertained, and what have we accomplished through it all? We scroll till our eyes burn, and satisfaction never comes. And those today we can even see the what am I thinking of? The hook, the nature of mankind in the way that they program the algorithms to those things. Because they're designed to grab hold of that piece in you that can never be satisfied and just more. That's how they make their money. There's always more to see, more to experience, more to take in. The appetite of our senses grows the more that we feed it. And it will never, ever, ever be satisfied. So there's no profit. There's no goal to reach. It's just monotonous, mundane stuff. Now, I don't say all that to say y'all stop watching TV or stop looking at social media. That's not the point. The point is not the technology or the images, the things you put in your eyes, the books that you read. There's some great books that you probably need to read. The point is you can't find your meaning there. You can't find your purpose there. That can't be the sum total of what you live for, to fill up the senses. There's no profit in it. Today we might say, well, it's a different world though. Today's the age of information. It's the age of enlightenment. There's great meaning and value in learning and being informed about the world and about all the things that's changing. It's different. It's a different time than what Solomon wrote. No, it's not. Preacher says in 9 and 10, what has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of, you say something's new? See, this is new? No, it's already been done. Already been done in the ages before us. History itself is just going around and around and around and around and around, just like the wind. Nations rise, nations fall, times of war, times of peace. What's happened before is going to happen again. But human nature remains the same. Yes, there are new discoveries and inventions, that are just incredible advancements. I was thinking today, I have more theological books on this thing in my pocket than most libraries had 100 years ago. Yes, there are some significant advantages. There are significant technologies. But the people that come up with them and the people that use them have the same fallen nature and are beset with the same basic problems. We today, in 2026, with all of our technology and all of our advancements and all of the great things that we have, we're still asking the same questions they were asking back then. What's the purpose of life? What's this all for? Is there any profit in my toil? Our problem is not new now that we have all this communication and technology. The problem is not technology's fault. It's the ancient condition of the human heart. We are made for infinite joy in an infinite God, and nothing else will satisfy the heart. Y'all with me? Questions, comments? All right, we're almost done. So the writer says, if it ever seems like it's anything new, you're wrong. It's only because you've forgotten what has come before. Last verse. There's no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. From a purely worldly perspective, one day you will be forgotten. Totally. What you have accumulated will be lost. What you have accomplished will be forgotten from a worldly perspective. Does anyone in here, this is a question I thought of this afternoon, anybody in here know the name of your great-great-grandfather? Not your father, your grandfather, or your great-grandfather, but your great-great-grandfather. Anybody know the name? Okay, 1, 2.
Skaliski, Adamic.
Huh?
Skaliski's and Adamics.
I'm not even going to try to repeat that. I don't know what you said. Speaking in tongues over there, isn't it? So, I don't know, 50 people, 70 people? Four? Yeah. 5 maybe? Great. Now, how many know the great-great-great-grandfather? Now hold on now. If you done spent 18 months on Ancestry.com, you don't get to play. I'm just talking about people who know because Mama told me about my people.
Grandma told me.
Grandma told you? Okay. Yeah.
My dad told me. They wrote a book.
Yeah. Okay.
No, they printed it out for me.
Yeah. If I went 5 greats, would anybody know?
No. Probably because they printed it out for me.
You don't get the reference. I'm talking about in your brain. You don't get to go look. We could all find out if we went and looked at our family tree and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Point is, it might be 3 generations, it might be 6 generations, it might be 10 generations, but your descendants won't remember you any better than you remember them. Now, all of this is bleak, and it's hard to take in, but let's start to apply it a little bit. One author, I stole this, so I don't remember his name, but it is a book that I was reading about Ecclesiastes. One author says when people start recognizing just the fleeting nature of life and just the repetitive exercise of futility that it all is. Remember, we're not talking about finding glory and meaning in God. We're talking about from a human perspective. He says there are usually 3 ways that just fallen people respond. The first is people try to escape. They try to escape the thinking about it by focusing their minds and their lives on anything tangible. Maybe it's sports or a career or a mission with a worthy goal. And people put all of their energy and all of their hope and just build their lives into whatever this thing is. But as we've seen, it always ends the same way. People hunker down and just try to forget that life is a vapor and that 9 generations from now, nobody's going to remember them or any of their work. The second way people respond is what's called nihilism. And basically that's just people lose all hope and just become cynical about everything. They just give up striving. No point in doing anything. Striving for anything and just wallow in the morass of how useless everything is. Just become miserable, fatalists. Doesn't matter what we do. And just endure the monotony of it all until they die. And the third is where I fell into in my college crisis, is hedonism, where people just live to have as much fun, much pleasure as they can possibly can while they're alive. Nothing else really amounts to much or anything, but there's no goal to accomplish in that. And you only go so far down that road before you realize this is not only futile, but it's harmful. But none of those things is Solomon's answer. The vanity of all things is not the whole story. That's only the way things are if we're looking at them from a human perspective. There is another view of these things. One that sees them not having meaning in and of themselves, but having meaning through the God who has given these things to us. Creation was subjected to futility, in a sense, because of sin. Romans 8 and 20 through 21 says, "For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God." The answer to all the sin and all the futility and all the meaningless monotony and purposelessness, if that's what you want to call it, in this life is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And when we view the world and our lives in the gospel through this perfect salvation, this reconciliation to God, then we can say with the psalmist, well, the heavens declare the glory of God. That's what they're for. The sun, yes, it's always repeating its cycle. It's always going around and around and around, but it isn't moving toward a goal. It moves because its goal is to glorify the God who created it. And that is what Psalm 19:5, the heavens declare the glory of God, can then say. And there is where we find meaning in all of these things that we've been calling vanity. Psalm 113:3 says, "From the rising of the sun to its setting." You see the repetition? The psalmist is talking about the sun coming up, sun going down. He says, from the rising to the setting, the name of the Lord is to be praised. That's where the meaning is found. So in the end of just the introduction of Ecclesiastes, and we're gonna learn a lot more vanity before it's over. Everything is vanity. It's pointless unless we take our eyes off of the things themselves and see their meaning in the God who created them and has given them to us as His gifts to enjoy. Okay? Questions, comments, statements, thoughts, anything? No.
My note says meaningless refers to emptiness and final results of all life apart from God.
I agree with that. Say that again.
Meaningless refers to the emptiness and final results of all life apart from God.
Well, if that's what it means, then I agree with that. He said meaningless in the NIV translation. His note says meaningless is
Refers to
the emptiness
and final results
and final results of all life apart from God. Yeah, so I agree with that definition. Yeah. When I read meaningless, I was thinking no purpose, no purpose. And it is kind of correct, because if I live for my career and that's my God, basically, my career, there is no purpose in it. I mean, you are living for something that has no purpose. But when you say it has no purpose, for me, that kind of made it sound like, God does have a purpose in all these things and all these things. And so there is purpose and there is meaning, even though we're too blind to see it sometimes. And so, I don't know. But, so like I said, it's not a bad translation. I just want to make sure we knew what we're talking about. All of this vanity stuff, we're going to see family, food, fun, entertainment, job, toil, great projects, all of it. He's going to call it vanity. But even he himself turns and says that they're gifts of God and they're for His glory. So live for God and enjoy the gifts that He's given. Yeah.
that tie back into we're created to glorify God.
Yeah.
So it just ties right back into that.
Yeah, it does. We're created to glorify, even human beings created to glorify God. That's our purpose. And so in that way, so I'm thinking on the fly here. I don't have this, so I may not phrase it well. God has, I have an aptitude for electrical work. I don't really, so don't be calling me. So I have an aptitude for it. I enjoy it. I go to school to be an electrician. I build a career of being an electrician, and I'm the best electrician in the whole state or nation or whatever, and I make lots and lots of money being an electrician. If that's where I find my identity, if that's where I find my meaning, my purpose in life is to help people set up their electricity, that is purposeless. Because there's going to come a day, and we're all, unless Jesus comes or you get in a sudden car wreck or something, we're all going to end up in a hospital bed with the little thing beeping, 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 and a doctor's going to come in and say, "This is all we can do." And there's going to come a time where electrical work just not going to be that important anymore. But if I have an aptitude to be an electrician, and I go to school to be an electrician, and I strive and I strain and I build a career, and I'm the best electrician in the world, and my purpose and my meaning is God has given me this gift to glorify Him and to serve Him, I can strive to be the best electrician there is for the glory of God. And when I'm laying on my deathbed, all of my striving to be an electrician is not in vain, and it's not purposeless, because the point is not the end goal of being an electrician. The point is be the best that God has made you to be for His glory and His name. That make sense? Okay. That's kind of a picture of what we're talking about. And you put anything in that blank, electrician, take that word out, put anything in there. And no matter how great, grand, helping the homeless, no matter what it is, if it's not for God's glory, in the name of Christ, for the gospel of Christ, there's going to come a time when it's going to be meaningless and forgotten. Okay? Any other thoughts? All right, we will end on that bleak note. God, we do love you, and we do thank you that things are not purposeless, that you have made nothing that is without purpose. God, forgive us for substituting our own purposes and our own meaning to all the beautiful and wonderful gifts that you've given us. God, they are not guaranteed. We know that in this life we will have trials. And God, we know that you are good through those trials as well, and that you use them for your glory and for our good. So God, help us to, as we walk through Ecclesiastes, help us to just continually see the idols that we make in just even the good and beautiful things that you've given in creation. Help us to examine our hearts and to identify the places that we need to turn toward your light and your glory and your purpose. God, help us to be who you've called us to be. And only you can do that. We don't have the strength. So God, we thank you that you are the source of our infinite joy, and you deserve all praise, all glory, all honor, no matter what we're going through in this life. God, we thank you and we love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you.